Welcome to Spider-Verse Minute, the tri-weekly podcast where we watch Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 1 minute at a time. I'm Sean Slater.
And I'm his sister Caroline.
And today we're watching minute 33, which opens with a cameo and ends a minute later in an alley.
I have titled this minute, They're Counting on You, specifically.
Yeah, that joke, I don't know how I feel about it.
I have some very mixed feelings, but I do kind of love it.
I think it's more of a, it's emotional whiplash. It doesn't feel like it should go there. I like the joke. I don't like where the joke is. I think it wouldn't really work anywhere else. But I think just because these couple of minutes have been somber, and then it kind of it's too abrupt of an ending to the sobriety, some somberness.
We'll get to it in a minute. Let's start at the beginning and we'll work our way to that, because I do want to talk about that moment.
Yeah, so it opens with the cameo, and that cameo is Floo Floo Bunny, the pink bunny.
It is the most heartbreaking cameo to date for me.
Yeah.
I cried so hard when this cameo happened. Let's just stop alluding to it. It's Stan Lee.
Yeah, and this was his first cameo after his death.
Was this the last cameo he recorded? I heard some people say that.
It might have been. I think I know they, for the MCU, they stockpiled a bunch of them. They just have a bunch of generic cameos that he has.
Yeah, I know they did that, but I believe this was the last one he recorded. I could be wrong.
This was also the only one that, or the only voiceover that the movie that they went to for them instead of having the person come to them. They went to his office and got the recordings there, and then went back and did everything else.
It does feel needed in this.
Yeah, especially his line of "I'm going to miss him." Whew, that is strangely prophetic.
Right?
Ouch.
I think what hits me more than the "I'm gonna miss him" is the "we were friends, you know."
Yeah, I want to know.
Oh.
In universe, if he was actually friends. Was he friends with Spider-Man?
I like to think he was.
Was it kind of it's the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and so Spider-Man's friends with everybody kind of thing?
I like the idea that in universe he was probably good friends with with whoever Stan Lee's character is in universe. Maybe a neighbor.
Yeah.
Wait, wasn't he the restaurant in the Tobey Maguire movies? He was the restaurant owner.
No. He was a DJ.
I'm thinking of PS4 game.
Oh, okay.
They have him when Peter goes to see MJ, near the end. He's I hope you two worked it out. You're good together. He knows them.
Yeah.
I'm aww.
Yeah, I do believe they confirmed that he did see the movie before he passed away. They were able to show him a rough cut of it. Yes.
Which this is a little strange of a comparison, but also not totally. It makes me think of what Danny DeVito did with Mara Wilson's mom.
Yeah.
Quick, long story short, Mara Wilson's mom was very ill when she was filming Matilda, and she actually didn't get a final cut of the movie, but what ended up happening is Danny DeVito got an early cut and took it to the hospital Mara Wilson's mom was at and showed it to her, so she got to see her daughter in the movie.
Yeah.
Ugh. Stuff like that chokes me up, but this cameo still makes me cry because I can't help but think of the timing with it.
Yeah, it's dealing with the death of a superhero and and then you have the real life death of
the creator.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I'm still breathing because I'm still choking up thinking about it. I'm emotional, everybody. I do want to talk about this one line because it's both kind of inspirational, but then it ends up being a gag. where Miles says, like, can I return it if it doesn't fit?
Yeah.
And it starts with, like, it always fits, eventually. And it's like, oh, like, you grow into the hero you want to be.
Yeah.
But then it comes into a gag, and I'm like,
he just pulls it up and it's way too small. Like,
yeah. Well, no, like the sign on the side where it pans over, and it's like the no returns ever, and I'm like, really? You put that is a gag that, like, though I find it funny, I kind of wish they didn't do it in a way, because that one feels.
I liked that gag a lot.
I like the gag.
Like I like it in context too.
Yeah, I like the gag. I just remember for some reason I'm like, oh, guys, I don't want that right now.
I also think because it ties into the next scene where he goes to pull up his pants and, like, he's still buying for his pre-spider bite sizes, and now, like, he's like, oh, he pulls it up and it's just way too short.
Yeah.
Like, he's not growing into that at all.
Going back to the scene before that, did you notice that right next to the sign, I don't know why I love this, there's a poster for the official hero guy suit.
Yeah. There's also, like, a vampire and cowboy costumes as well there, but
I don't know, something about the official hero guy suit really tickled me. I thought that was amusing.
Yeah.
Going into the bathroom when he's putting on the clothes, I do like, just to continue on and jump in then, but I enjoy that they had this line from MJ put over top during this moment, which is, he didn't ask for his powers, but he chose to be Spider-Man.
Yeah, and it's like, this is Miles choosing to be Spider-Man.
Well, and I also, I brought it up, it's like, it's this theme of choice that we haven't talked about in a while.
Yeah, the choices and expectations that that Miles has, and this is the first time that he has a meaningful choice.
I almost feel like this was done for an ironic thing where it's like, Peter Parker chose to be Spider-Man, where it's like Miles feels like he doesn't have a choice and has to be Spider-Man. Yeah. He does have a choice, but I feel like he thinks he doesn't have one. Like,
yeah.
He made a promise to Peter. He has to do this. And it sort of sets up what we talked about in the previous minute of, like, Miles being split between being the regular kid and being Spider-Man.
Yeah, and trying to make that decision. You can see he's still, like, in the mirror, he's got that look of, like, uncertainty still.
Mm-hmm. Like, he hasn't fully chosen to commit to being Spider-Man. Like, he's doing it because he feels like he has to.
Yeah, or even just, like he'll do it this one time, but, you know, maybe not again after this.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up him looking at himself in the mirror, because if you remember in minute 2, we talk about very briefly the scene where there's a shot of Spider-Man, looking in a very similar bathroom mirror. And the way when Miles puts on his mask and looks at himself, it's a very similar Samrat setup, very similar angles, very similar background. And it reminded me of that. Like, there's an echo to that.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks, you know, it's that same sort of subway style, like public bathroom kind of thing. Yeah. Just not nearly as graffitied as the one that Peter was in.
No. But I thought that was a very cool echo to have that image set up in the beginning and then have it sort of be echoed here with Miles. Yeah. It's like drawing those parallels between the two.
And then when he leaves the bathroom and goes out into the crowd at presumably at the end of the funeral, maybe.
It sounds like it.
But at some point, MJ's just given a speech to everybody in front of the church. And you see a bunch of people with all sorts of different masks on. I also like how everybody's in blue and red. Like, yeah. Like they had a dress code to come to it. And it's either blue or red. There's like a couple people in some black.
The unspoken dress code.
Yeah.
I also love that the masks aren't just on, like, little kids, they're on adults as well.
Yeah. And you get some, like, you know, makeshift hand-drawn homemade masks. You get the, like, cheap plastic ones that are just, like, cardboard that you stick around your face. And then you get the kind of higher quality ones that, like, Miles and the guy that Miles is wearing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is just kind of that bit we touched on before, where in MJ's speech, where she says like, yeah, he was just the kid who happened to get bit. Like it could have
Yeah,
been
and
anyone.
it's like, we're all Spider-Man, and we are counting on you. And Miles quietly says, it's a very nice heroic moment where he's like, they're counting on me. I genuinely like the guy who leans over and goes, probably not you specifically. I think it's a metaphor.
Yeah, I like that they're counting on me to himself.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really like the lean over guy.
I didn't mind it because I thought it was a nice sort of transition into the very next scene where Miles dumps out his comics in the alley and starts reading to get advice.
It was just it was a bit too sudden for me.
See, that's how I felt about the gag with Stan Lee. Like that one feels more sudden than this one. Like this one, I think, and it's a little funnier because like he's in a crowd. It makes sense that like the way he said it, someone probably heard it and is like, dude, now. Like I thought that was a funnier and landed a lot more than the Stan Lee one, where I felt that, and that might also be because of, with the context of Stan Lee, like having that line, it always fits eventually, kind of gets a little undercut with the gag, which I don't mind. I still think it's a funny gag. I wish it was a little, I think it's just a little too jarring for me, since it still continues with the sadness.
Yeah.
Where this one, it's like, it's the end of the sadness. Like, here's a gag to kind of lighten the mood a bit, and then here's a whole other tonal scene.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I like this gag a little better.
Yeah, and then, like you were saying, Miles then just appears in the alleyway with some comics, and it's time to do some studying.
Yeah. I counted 7 issues.
Yeah, that's what I saw, at least 7 of them. It looked like there might be a couple maybe hidden under some of the others, but we saw the one that we saw in his room a bunch earlier, and then there's a couple others as well.
Yeah, I very much enjoy that. It's like, okay, what do I do now?
Yeah, it is really funny though that it's just like in the street, like, or like just in an alleyway with not much to do. Just like, okay, right here looks good. Let's crouch down in this alleyway.
He's not that far back in the alleyway either.
Yeah.
Like, he looks like he's still relatively, like, on the corner of the building. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah, and like, one of the small things is the, when he puts the comics down, like, it has the movement lines again, just the like POW lines.
Oh, I didn't notice that. That's fun.
It's only on for like a frame. I want to know if he, like, after that speech, did he go out and just buy a bunch of them, or was this his collection of them?
He had his book bag.
Yeah, and he had that True Life Tales as well.
Yeah, so it makes me think he might have grabbed them from his room at Visions, and then like bought the costume, went to the funeral, and then went there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and so this kind of ties into the, like, is it the same, like, was this like, okay, he died on like Wednesday and the funeral's on Saturday, or like, is it a day later, is it 4 days later?
I'm a little curious because, so Jeff in the previous minute, I think it was minute 31, he says, it's a weekday, you made a commitment to that school, and then Rio cuts him off.
So we know it's not Friday.
Saturday, so we know he at least has school. So it's probably, like, and he had school earlier that day because he left to go to the subway.
Yeah.
So it's probably it's got to be like a Monday through Thursday, sometime in there. And I feel like with the city, I think they would get it pretty fast, so it's probably maybe a day or 2 later. And then it makes me wonder, I'm like, did they cancel classes for this? I feel like they would have canceled classes for this.
Yeah, it could definitely be, if not canceled, like, the classes weren't quote unquote
mandatory.
Like, well, yeah, no, just like, even they probably had classes, but it wasn't. Kids weren't going to be there, and the schools probably made like a absentee exception for like if you wanted to go to the public services. You can do that, but I imagine even the kids in class, like, class wasn't happening. even if the teachers wanted to.
Yeah, I could honestly just see the teacher being like, look, if you want to do work, go do it. Because I know with me, sometimes with stuff like this, like, I need to be busy or I don't work. And I know some kids like, no, I can't do anything, I won't focus. So I feel like the teachers would have been balancing for that. Like, here's something to do if you want to do it. If you just want to sit and play on your phone, fine.
Yeah. That's all I had for this minute. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on before I moved over to the alternate scene?
That's all I have, so go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm going to split this scene into 2 minutes, across this minute and Monday's minute, because it kind of touches just briefly on the stuff happening here, and then it replaces most of the next minute. So it starts with during the speech that MJ's giving, like she finishes her part and then steps away, and then an announcer comes on and announces like Wilson Fisk coming up to, or philanthropist Wilson Fisk coming up to give some words. And at first Miles is like, okay, yeah, whatever. But then when he sees him walk up, he like recognizes him as Kingpin, and like his breathing accelerates. He gets real nervous, and Wilson Fisk is like, oh, as many of you know, I'm no stranger to loss, because again, alluding / flat out saying like, yeah, he lost his family. And then so Miles like starts to like run away through the crowd. Like he's like, oh, I gotta get out of here quickly. Which, quick sidebar, it really like startled me when that bit happened, because usually these are just like black and white, pencil sketches kind of, not necessarily pencil, but black and white like ink sketchings. But then the part where he was running through the crowd, it was like a very early 3D rendering of it.
Oh, really?
And so like Miles was sort of rendered, but it was like a bad render, like bits of his clothing were poking through itself. And then like the people in the crowd were just like gray blocky people. And then it cuts back to like the sketches again. It was very weird, like this like 3-second clip of just like, oh, this is 3D rendered. When he cuts there, it cuts to like a training montage of Miles and Genki watching the Spider-Man movies again, like the in-universe ones, and like that's how Miles is doing his training. So instead of reading the comic books, he's using the movies. And it goes through and like, this is how Spider-Man did it. He did it really quick, and then Miles does it, and he fails a lot. And it like does side-by-side bits of that, but we'll talk about that on Monday's minute, when that has, it plays a much bigger impact. It's a pretty long alternate scene. It's like a couple minutes long.
So this one definitely sounds like they got at least part of it further into the animation before they decided to cut it.
Yeah.
And part of it was 3D rendered.
Yeah, and it could have just been like the bit that was rendered didn't have to necessarily be the like a Wilson Fisk thing. It could have just been him like having a panic attack and trying to leave. And so that makes a bit more sense why it might have stayed in a little bit longer. But I think they did a like fine job of removing him here and just having him do his speech later on at the gala.
Yeah, it definitely keeps it more separated, and I do like how they play it off later. Yeah, especially because they get a pretty funny line out of it for starters. But it also it's kind of nice to just kind of have it like, it's separated and he's still a looming figure, but you don't have to worry about his public idea until later. Yeah. I also really love the idea, and part of me kind of wishes they played more with it, and they kind of do, kind of don't at the same time, with the idea of Miles getting a panic attack.
Yeah, it doesn't really show a whole lot.
No.
They don't really show how like anxious he is with the weight of this responsibility, but...
I mean with the idea of seeing Fisk, especially after what he saw.
Yeah.
Like, I love having that idea, and it makes total sense, too. Like, Miles is probably traumatized from
Oh yeah, he's definitely going to have some PTSD.
I would be shocked if he doesn't. So I love the idea that they, like, kind of played with it. A little sad they cut it, but I also understand why they did. They do a little bit later when they get to the lab. but we'll talk about that when we get to that minute.
It doesn't really add much to the scene, or to the story. Like, it was just some more flourish that could have, you know, if it would have stayed in, it wouldn't have really changed much. But
yeah, it wouldn't have changed much to the story. I think it would have added a little bit to Miles's character, but they find other ways to show his, like, the trauma that he went through. So I'm okay with it getting cut. I'm a little sad it got cut, but at the same time, they make up for it another way. So yeah, I think it was a smart decision to cut it. I just gotta say, I love listening to these alternate scenes because it's kind of fun to hear, like, just how, I think I've said it before, like, just how different of a movie we would have gotten. Is there anything else you want to add about the alternate scene? Is there anything you thought of with the notes?
No, I think that covers everything I have for this week.
Same here. So thank you all for listening. We will catch you again on Monday. You can follow us at Twitter at SpiderVerseMin, M-I-N. Find us at Facebook and Instagram at SpiderVerseMinute, as well as YouTube at SpiderVerseMinute. You can also email us at podcast@spiderverseminute.com. Thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.